Meeting the Policy and Performance Committee. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence.
Yes, Councillor Owen, and I'm subbing for Philip.
Yeah, give him our best wishes, won't you, for a speedy recovery. I've actually sent it myself, but seriously, having a knee replacement is not the easiest thing in the world.
No, you wouldn't,
Sorry.
Councillor David Watts, I'm substituting for him. His apologies for...
It's Steve Carr you're substituting for.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
No,
Well, he was going to
Chair,
sub for Stephen.
I'm subbing. I'm subbing for. No, I'm not subbing. I'm on this committee. Sorry.
Can we?
It's going well.
Yeah, can we start again? Right, good evening everybody. It's just 7 o'clock. Welcome you all to tonight's Policy and Performance Committee. You're substituting for Councillor Owen, yeah. Any further? Sorry, Councillor Crowe.
Yes, Councillor Jackson's unwell.
Really, another one. Yeah, I think half the world's gone down with a cold this week.
Councillor Sue Bagshaw unfortunately had to give her late apologies.
Right, I understand, so. A little bit concerned about that. Item 2 then, any declarations of interest?
My usual liberty leisure, but if we can say it or not.
Yeah, of course, myself and Councillor Marshall are members of the board for the Town Centre Development. Right, and item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the meeting on the 1st of July 2021 on pages 5 to 8. Can we agree that they're to correct record? Agreed? Item 4 is the first of the Policy Committee meetings tonight, is the corporate debt policy on pages 9 to 32. The recommendation, the implementation of the updated corporate debt policy be approved. I'll move that from the chair.
Second that.
And I'll pass over to Mr Sudlow, who's going to take us through the report.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just an updated policy. Not much has changed, to be honest with you. The processes that we follow in respect of the recovery and the amounts and the recovery methods haven't actually changed. The most notable change is the fact that we've brought it in line with the financial regs in the sense of debts that are up to £1,200 won't automatically be referred to legal. Because we found that over the years it's not actually benefited anybody going through the legal processes. It added extra costs and we've still not been able to recover them. So what we will do as a matter of course is review those debts, and if we feel that it's unviable to take them through to legal, we will write them off at that point in time, with the view that obviously if they ever come back to being in a position to repay that debt, we'll write it back and recover it at that point. But it's just lining it up a little bit more with the regulations that we've got in from a write-off point of view. But other than that, very little has changed. The council tax and the NNDR side of recovery will remain based upon what the legislation says. But yeah, is obviously happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, questions. What I'm going to do is take the report, I'll take it as a whole, but if there's specific items you wish to relate to in detail, we can take them individually. Councillor Kerry, sorry, I forgot your name. Councillor Kerry.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to support the policy. Obviously, you have to get it all nice and neat and all the right policy and bits in there. It's very good. Just one question around it. In that, at the last time we wrote off some debts, and particularly business rates debts, there was significant amounts of money. And one or two of the examples we saw in the excluded item on individual cases had been going on for 3 years and whatever. Are you happy that we're going to be able to stop the longer term, so recognising the possibility of these debts early on, to be more proactive, so that we, rather than spending money on the legal side, on chasing money that we can't get, we're going to be upfront and getting earlier intervention so we don't have more debt?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yes, ultimately is obviously we're trying to get to the debt as quickly as we possibly can. The difficulty with, you've mentioned business rates there, is obviously is every year another debt occurs. Yeah. So we have to go through a process of obtaining, we do send a bill out, we send a reminder out, we'll send a final reminder out, we'll then send a summons out, we'll then get a liability order, they will then go and collect the debt through different methods that we possibly can, using enforcement agents or whatever we can. That obviously takes a significant amount of time, and by the time sometimes it's coming back to the Finance and Resources Committee from a write-off point of view, is that could have accumulated a several years worth of debt that we've been trying to recover. So that's why sometimes they come back and they seem a little bit larger. I do know that a few came back from the last Finance and Resources. I know I wasn't available, and I'm bringing those back next week with a more detailed explanation as well. But yeah, ultimately the policy is designed to try and target the debt as quickly as we possibly can, identify who can pay, and where they can't, establish methods and ways of either stopping them using the services that we're able to. Obviously, with business rates and council tax, we can't do that because obviously, if someone lives in a property, we'll just put another charge on. But say, for example, football pitches, if we're not getting paid for those, we'll stop them using them, things like that. So that's the process that we're going to try and do using this.
Things like refuse collection too.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Okay. Councillor Easton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was a couple of things, but the first one is, so we said about it rolling over for year, potentially rolling over for year on year. If I then, for example, don't pay my business rates, and I've been in that unit for so many years, and you come to me and say you haven't paid it, and then I go on another year and I haven't paid it, and then I go on another year and I haven't paid it, does that mean that you haven't got the right tools? Because you know where I am, you know where my business premises are, I've been trading there for 3 years, so that debt's gone on for 3 years now. Where I am, I've been stable, I've been trading from that point of view. Do you know what I'm trying to say is, why can't you, if you know that, if they disappear, I get it, and etc. But they're not. You know where they are. They're probably trading, etc. But why can't we get the money off them? What stops us getting the money off them? Just.
No, I understand where you're coming from with that, and it is a frustration that we do have. What happens is we go through the process. Is automatically is the process with council tax and business rates is very similar. We send a bill out and we expect someone to pay. Simple as that. If they don't pay, we'll send them a reminder. If they don't pay that, we'll send them a final reminder, or we'll send them a summons depending upon the process, the stage that it's at the moment. Once we've got that summons and it goes to court, we get the liability order. That liability order opens up some extra avenues for us to seek recovery. From a business rates point of view, from a council tax point of view, that's relatively straightforward, is because it gives us the opportunity to go and do things like attachment of benefits, attachment of earnings, things like that, which is fine because most people have got some kind of ability with that. Not everybody, and some people already have an attachment of benefits, which means that we can't then recover it even at that point. Business rates is much more complicated than that when it comes to that point, because often it's limited companies. So as obviously we've got to then look at how we get that from a limited company rather than from an individual, and enforcement agents are sometimes used in that situation. But again, we're then relying upon the enforcement agents and the processes that they have to follow to be able to seize goods in order to repay that debt. And often when it does get to that position, is they do quite often have to send debts back to us saying that they've been unable to gain access to the premises, or they've been unable to seize goods of any value because they may be on hire purchase or things like that, which obviously they can't levy on. So it comes down to that kind of aspect, whereas the legislation restricts us on what we can and what we can't do. We would love to do lots more, but it does come down to a point. Now, there is situations where obviously, if it's a sole trader or something like that, we can look at committals and things like that. But again, you wouldn't be doing that on a debt that's a relatively small debt of maybe a year's worth or 2 years worth, because it's the penalty is far outweighs the cost, the charge maybe. But is if you've got a 5 or 6 years debt that goes into the tens of thousands of pounds, you may look at a committal proceeding on that side of things. And that's sometimes why we do bring debts to committees that are larger, because we've sometimes had to wait to that point to see whether we can go down that avenue. So that's another contributing factor. But yeah, ultimately, we're restricted by the legislation when it comes to revenue, to benefits, to council tax and business rates.
If not, then the recommendation on page 33 has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? That's it. Unanimously agreed. Okay, can we move on then to item 5, which is...
Sorry, I think that was recommendation on page 9.
Sorry, that's sorry, what was I saying? Yes, put on page 9, I beg your pardon. Recommendation on page 9. The corporate debt policy be approved. Sorry, can you please show again? All those in favour? I beg your pardon. I'm on to the next item already. Item 5 then is the Beeston Town Centre redevelopment on pages 33 and 34.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pick this up. This is my regular update to the committee on the cinema development, and it's great timing today because yesterday was a fantastic event. We had the new James Bond movie open at Beeston with some great publicity. It was on the national BBC News. It's before I woke up, but Sarah Yates did drop me a message. I did share the clip with members. It was fantastically attended. We had a full house turning up at 7 minutes past midnight, aptly timed. So a great success. So that's going from strength to strength. In terms of the units, again, I'm delighted to report I've personally signed off 2 operators. One is Ottimores, an Italian offer, and a separate one related organisation called Legends of Beeston Social, and that's a food and beverage operator well established in Nottingham. So lots of really positive news around the development. In terms of a separate part of the square, the Argos block, we've talked about that block at length at the Beeston board. We've given some serious thought to what we can do to really make it more attractive to the market. And we've come to view that it needs some further work internally to make it attractive to a number of different operators. So we're looking to have some further work done by consultants in terms of refurbishing the internal part of that building to make sure we can secure some new tenants. So that there's a reference to the Argos block in the report. And there's reference there to the Finance Committee in terms of some money to help support that work. So it's a very, very positive position. And really does vindicate the decision taken by the council to proceed with this development as part of the wider regeneration Beeston. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Dart. The recommendation that we're asked to resolve tonight to continue to delegate the key decisions in consultation with the cross-party project board. I'll move that recommendation on page 33. Any questions or comments? Councillor Kerry?
Yeah, maybe an off-the-wall comment, and I hope you don't mind if I bring this to the table. Many years ago, when Beeston Town Centre Development was in a different guise, before the tram, it was envisaged that the Argos block would go, and that would create an incredible vista when coming off the high road, past the new development on the left, opens up to a lovely vista going all the way down the high road with the church and everything else, and also create a lot more space for outdoor stuff, markets, other and really be able to bring something different to the town centre. I'm asking if that could be included in the work you're doing to look forward with the Argos block, please.
No, all options are open on it. We've only commissioned the work to look at potential for redevelopment of the Argos block, but changing the sort of canopy and looking towards where the new toilet block's going as well. But when the tram originally was developed, one of the ideas was to open that church vista, which is done, you know, considerably from the corner. When you look at as it was before, it was hidden. Now, you know, when the tram is open, but all options are open on that site. And whilst I'm more than happy to see more businesses open in Beeston, there is an urgent need for some improved views. And one of the issues I took to the board was about the green infrastructure in particular, on where that blank corner is, as I call it. But all options are open and will be considered.
Can I just quick? So you've just said, you just confirmed that you've already been considering the fact that that block could go and creating an open green vista.
No, we're not at board level. I've been on that site several times to have a look at it, and one of the things I did look at with some of my colleagues was what would you do on that corner block, you know, where the toilet block is and everything. What more does it need? And when I went to the board meeting, I talked about the need, as the building stands now, to improve it. But it's also an opportunity as well to look at whether or not the upstairs of that August block would convert to some town centre housing as well. So there's an opportunity to look at all issues relating to Beeston Town Centre. The Beeston, if you look at the report further on, is doing remarkably well considering the pandemic and the impact in the other areas. We have got some concerns around our other town centres, but Beeston is a vibrant place, and it will be a balance between the need to provide more open space and what we call a phase 3 development, which Greg in particular is keen on, about the bandstand and the fountains and things like that. So, you know, there's lots of things to consider, not lots of opportunities to bring that to the table. I know. I must admit, I'm quite excited by the development, Beeston Town Centre. I think it's a fabulous development, and there is an opportunity to do so much more. And so we'll continue to look at phase 2 and phase 3, ways in which we can improve the town. Any further questions or comments? If not, then the recommendation, first to note the report and then to resolve to continue the debt scheme and delegation arrangements, been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Then that's unanimously agreed. Can move on now to the devolution bill. I said a verbal update was provided by the Chief Executive. I just thought I'd get that in before she expected me to do it. The meeting didn't conclude until 4 o'clock today, so obviously there wasn't time to prepare any written reports, but a verbal update will now be provided by Ruth.
Thank you, Chair. So in common with over 30 county councils, Nottinghamshire County Council has expressed an interest to the government in being involved in negotiations for a county deal. They've done that after having had informal discussions with district council leaders and with the city council leader. There is a lot of detailed work to be done before we're going to be in a position to report formally to you on what the content of that deal exactly would include. But I think I can say a few general things about what is being discussed at this stage. So first of all, it's important to understand that what we're talking about is non-structural reform. That means that what is being discussed is not changing the structure to local government in Nottinghamshire. Instead, what we're discussing is how to add value to the way that we work together by having powers devolved to us from government and exercising those new powers and potentially funding in ways that will be able to benefit the people of Nottinghamshire. The themes that are currently being discussed in broad terms and around which we are developing ideas are education and skills, transport, environment, the economy and infrastructure, land and housing, joint working on community safety, community cohesion and reducing reoffending, health and social care, tourism and heritage, regulatory powers, and under the broad heading of public service reform, arrangements which authorities can opt into if they think it's in the interests of local people, to work together more closely on various service areas, an example of which might be implementing the new powers under the Environment Bill around collection of food waste, for example. So those are the broad areas that are being discussed. It is proposed that a governance arrangement for those powers would be through a revised joint committee structure, namely what is currently called the Economic Prosperity Committee. It would have a wider remit, but all district councils are represented in that group. There is no discussion about having a mayor, but the government will expect strong local leadership. So it will be for our area to demonstrate that the arrangements for governance present to the government strong local leadership. I would say that the discussions are very constructive. They're being conducted in a very amicable and respectful way across the tiers. I think good progress is being made, and I hope to be able to present to you further details for your consideration quite shortly, because the government are wanting to move quite quickly on this, as it links quite closely to their levelling up agenda. I think that's all I can say, just to give you a broad outline of what is happening on that topic. Thank you, Chair.
Just before I ask members for comments, just to add to what the Chief Executive said, our key concern is obviously in East Midlands is the levelling up agenda, whether that's with or without HS2. But the levelling up agenda and the wider Connect programme with the East Midlands and the opportunities that affords to create jobs and training and skills update and access to employment is a key issue for us, an absolutely key issue. And there's a recognition across all the authorities and all tiers of authorities of the need to be talking to government with one voice, rather than individual authorities talking about their own particular area, but about the wider economic benefits and prosperity that could come forward. So important to understand and never forget, Broxtowe is key and central to the East Midlands levelling up, not just for the HS2 station, but the Totem Master Plan would be the first major project delivered under the DevCo and the Alchemy Board proposals. Then, of course, the East Midlands Freeport and the decommissioning of Ratcliffe-on-Soar power station. So the major East Midlands projects are actually on our doorstep, if not part of our borough. And so we are seen to be key to the delivery of the proposals for levelling up in the DevCo. And I'll take a report to Council about progress on that. Hopefully we'll hear from the government in between time about the formal establishment of the DevCo. But of course they would be key deliverers of the economic overall target for any prosperity committee. So I have obviously still got some reservations and been quite open about it. There is too much at the moment. I think there's the D2N2 all loading government funds with different objectives and criteria into the delivery. It's going to need to be reformed and restructured if we are to get the maximum out of it. But I think it's fair to say that all authorities are working productively and cooperatively with a new leader of the County Council, and cross-party all recognise the need to ensure that the East Midlands and the government's levelling up agenda comes to our area and that we can provide for future generations. That's our key aim in all this. The rest of it, how we deal with things like whether it's food waste, whether it's the environment, they are key issues too. But a major issue has to be economic prosperity and the long-term future for the East Midlands. Now, I throw that over to members if they wish to ask any questions or make any comments. Councillor Carey?
I mean, firstly, I guess I need to declare an interest as a county councillor in this, and I'm aware that and I will do. But I think it's very pleasing to hear the work going on and the progress that is being made, and that's how I think you are able to help government to make the right decisions in going forward and get the right projects at the top of the list. So I think it's very important that that message is sent. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think it's vital to ensure, particularly with the devolution bill taking place as well, you know, I have no doubt that Nottinghamshire has the ability and the capacity to be the leader. It is the leading region in the country for manufacturing. We all seem to forget that when they plough money into the West Midlands or London economy. The East Midlands has the highest percentage of manufacturing of any other region in the country. And that's the point we need to make to government all the time, that we need that connectivity, access and opportunity for equality of employment, and we need to protect our green and blue infrastructure, in fact enhance our environment to compensate for it as well. And I'm also a very keen supporter of the fusion reactor as well. Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, it's also the region with the largest manufacturing decline over the last 30 years.
True, yeah.
When do we transition from informal to more formal footing on the talks?
On the, sorry, what talks?
Well, everyone's talking informally together,
Yeah.
councils and authorities, amicably.
Yeah.
When does that transition to a more formal
Yeah.
footing?
There's a paper that is being worked on. It is hoped that we will take that to an economic prosperity committee. It may be, obviously we want to try to make sure that we synchronise between our authorities how the information is received, so one authority doesn't get it first. So it's likely if we have an agreed paper and it does go to the Economic Prosperity Committee first, which is where all the district council leaders would have to agree and sign it off. Following that, it would then go to all the individual authorities. I think that is the order in which things would proceed. But it's likely that there will be an informal meeting of the Economic Prosperity Committee next to discuss the next iteration of the draft document. So I can't say exactly when you will see it, but I think it would be before the end of October.
So Councillor Marie Hannah?
Thank you. I'm very much aware of the government's other agendas across the board. So we've got in ICSs, or as they're now called ICBs, the acronyms fly off the handle like nobody's business. I suppose really it's, you'll have given some thought to this, but it generates its own industry, doesn't it? And I think capacity is something that I would certainly, as chair of personnel committee, be wanting to keep an eye on. To ensure that you do have the capacity to be able to undertake the work, because it's a huge ask to keep the day job running as well as involve yourselves with other committees as well. So I look forward to those conversations in any way that we can help as well to support that.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Marie. I think that's a misunderstood issue sometimes, you know, the capacity. The whole way in which, from the start of the pandemic, going back almost 18 months now, looking at the way in which we've managed the pandemic and the economic impact of that post-pandemic, and then you start to look to the wider future of, particularly with the East Midlands, and the figure to the East Midlands worth £2.7 billion. You know, it's a huge responsibility. My concern is always we haven't got the capacity, but this is an issue that's been addressed with the Chief Executive and others, to look at the ways in which we can maximise our opportunities for investment. As I say, whilst that figure of 2.7 billion, when you look at that doesn't of course include HS2, and Broxtowe sits in the middle of the major projects, you know, ourselves and Rushcliffe Park, but the first part of delivery of the programme in East Midlands is actually in Broxtowe, you know, so it's imperative, and I will try and hold as many cross-party talks. I hope you understand as well that the papers are confidential at this stage, and we've been told they are confidential and will remain so until they've been to the Prosperity Committee. But I'll try and engage all members in the process as best I can. And of course, with the Jobs and Economy Committee here as well, we are trying to resolve a reporting procedure and methodology with the scant resources that we've got. So we will be continuing to look at our resource base, our corporate priorities and our targets, and it may well be that as we move, I hope, to a new system of governance politically in the next, by the time of the next year, that they will be much more in tune with the way in which nationally and regionally the way that we're going. That's the hope anyway, talking about a cabinet system. So, you know, they're continually now to be worked out on the way in which we reorganise and direct our corporate responsibilities according to priorities. Anybody got any further questions or comments? Can I thank Chief Executive for that? Thanks very much, Ray. Item 7 on tonight's agenda is the update on the agreements for a new Park Bistro. It's on pages 35 to 38. It is a noted report tonight. Do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can confirm that all the legal documents are with the solicitors of the bistro operators. All the relevant questions have been answered, so there is nothing standing in the way of the completion of this matter.
I should be saving up now from now till Christmas, and hopefully I'll have saved enough money to go and have a one-course meal there for one. I was going to say I was going to go to Beeston Cinema, but I can't save up that quick as well. You know, God, I nearly fell through the floor when I saw the price of it. But there you go.
What is the OAP rate these days?
Don't laugh. Don't laugh at him. Don't encourage him. The OAP rate. I love it. I love it. About a year from being at OAP to when I can get my pension. Sore point, that is. So, any questions or comments? Councillor Kerry?
Yeah, it's in in my ward. Very pleased to see this coming. I think it fills a lovely gap along Long Lane and Halfway House to various places, and it's really going to help the local sports teams, you know, when they're on the rec and all that kind of stuff. But can I just ask, are you absolutely sure that the developers, the new management, are being given everything they need to open at the earliest opportunity? And secondly, in terms of the comment about the planning decision, where parking was not discussed, was with the lease. I mean, the land, I guess, is Broxtowe owned, the car park. I'm just wondering if there's anything that working in partnership Broxtowe can do to help create on-street parking bays along the line of the front of the rec, along Long Lane, to help, because I think parking could become an issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll look at that now. It's in your ward out. We know who's taking us all out for a minute then. We'll make sure, but yeah, the first part of the answer is yes. We are confident. I think that's fair to say.
I have an email from our lawyer to confirm just what I've told you, so I'm absolutely sure that they have everything they need.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? We'll just make the recommendation that Eric takes us all out and pays because it's in his ward.
They do slice of toast for 10 pence or something like that.
Well, Nelson, which I think is a good idea, don't you, Councillor Crowe? Item 8 on the agenda is review of the corporate plan progress and financial performance on page 37 to 54. It's a joint report. Do you want to go first, Ruth?
Thank you, Chair. So just a few words on what is before you. First of all, on housing, I think the situation is it is reasonably good. However, I have to highlight to you the fact that homelessness is definitely increasing, as you might expect, with the restriction on eviction being lifted. I was told by the housing officer this week that all 16 units of temporary accommodation were full. And although people were being moved on very quickly, the situation is certainly something we need to continue to keep an eye on. On rent collection, again, this is also something we need to carefully watch. As you know, the changes to the universal credit system coming into effect from September are inevitably going to have some increase in, result in some increase in arrears and financial pressures for our tenants. However, I can assure you that proactive work has been happening on the part of housing officers, financial inclusion officers, going out, talking to tenants, advising them and helping them to prepare for these changes. We had a very good year on rent collection last year, and we hope that we will address the challenges as best we can and support people through the changes. On the environment, green waste collection continues to go very well, albeit, as members know, there are challenges with HGV drivers and so on, sometimes causing some difficulties in service delivery, but nevertheless the service is continuing as best we can. I think the data gaps are due to annual figures being reported, but good progress is being made as the Environment Committee receives reports recently on making progress to address our carbon reduction targets. There was recently a festival event in Chilwell, and that went very well. And we're looking to see how we can learn from that and build on it to carry on engaging local people in these issues in the future. On health, again, quite a lot of data which only comes in annually. On the training of dementia friends, we are continuing to be committed to the implementation of our action plan, in that for example, our 2 new dementia-friendly bungalows have been let and our action plan is being implemented. We are finding we are going to be using some e-learning for training of dementia friends in future, which will enable us to extend the scope and the numbers involved in the number of friends that we're able to train. On community safety, the reason why at the top of page 47 you have some 1920 data comparators is that really is more or less a non-COVID year, and 2021 is the year when the COVID and breach cases were lumped into the ASB figures. So the situation at the moment is that the figures are running below that of the previous year, which you might expect, and broadly comparable ultimately with 1920. So I think we are getting back to a more normal level of antisocial behaviour. However, antisocial behaviour is never a problem that we accept as normal, and I think as more people are working from home, there are more antisocial behaviour complex cases being reported, and a lot of those have mental health issues attached to them as well. That's one of the features of them. There is some more detailed figures relating to antisocial behaviour reported to environmental health, communities and housing, and the antisocial behaviour cases in environmental health are generally around noise. Domestic violence, again, continues to be something that we're working hard on. The Community Safety Committee received a report on the White Ribbon Action Plan. There is a White Ribbon event being planned. There are a number of initiatives and partnership working continuing, so we are doing some good work on that. But the problem is still still very real. I think that's all I will say on the report up to page 47. I'm sure Soph will talk about financial performance.
So we'll deal with up to pages 47 first. And can we just say that on page 40, when we talk about rent collection, one of our concerns has always been the cut that we saw this year in DHP. However, we've got some better news to report to committee tonight, that following our extensive lobbying, the government's provided some additional resources for DHP, of which Broxton will benefit from 20,000. Yeah, just under 20,000. So, although it doesn't go somewhere to address the shortfall that we saw from last year, it does make a big difference to our rent collection figures for those people who are in receipt of discretionary housing payments. But if there's any questions, I'll take the report as a whole up to from page 37 to page 47. Any questions or comments? Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, I'd just like to pass on congratulations really to Broxtowe, Tim Crawford and Paul Wolfson and the team for the Inham Nook Green event, which was really, really good. Felt good, looked good, really well attended, talking and with communities which might not traditionally be engaging with the subject matter that we want to try and promote. Should be a template for a rollout for other towns within the borough. That would be an excellent opportunity as well. Excellence, you know, we had Alan Simpson, you know, who's an expert in as a climate campaigner, you know, speaking, and you know, a great variety of stories, but also importantly, I thought kind of like a live feedback loop as well. Things could have been improved. I think some of the feedback was perhaps a bit more for kids, engagement for kids, and perhaps a bit more promoting, actually promoting the event, you know, it was and detailing kind of like location and stuff. But you know, they're small things from a very, very successful event, and I think, you know, Helen Skinner and the officers should be congratulated on what they've done. In terms of page 47, Chair, and Chief Executive's reminder to us all, you know, about the importance of bearing down on well, violence against women really, and domestic violence. Today is of course a pertinent day for that, with the sentencing of Cousins for his horrific murder of Sarah Everard. But it's a microcosm, it's particularly horrific, but a microcosm of the issue. How many women do you think have been murdered by an abusive partner or husband since Sarah Everard was murdered? It's 80. 80 women since Sarah Everard have been murdered by violent men, and it's incredibly important that we continue to bear down on this issue within the borough.
Thank you very much, and I'll pledge my support, and then Councillor Williamson is supporting the White Ribbon event in particular, and I've offered to lend my support to that. And just before I move on to anybody else, to say that you'll be pleased to see that I'm still contributing on page 45 to the number of inactive adults in Broxtowe. I'm not intending to start exercising any day soon. Any further questions or comments, Councillor Eason?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. With us having this information from Paul Wolfson on almost daily basis about the bins, which is very, very useful, I noticed we get a lot of missed bins. Is that because we're mixing teams up, so they perhaps don't know where all the bins are? because I would think we wouldn't normally miss so many bins.
Yeah.
Is it seems that, because then I see that they then have to have another lorry, spends part of the day or a day going around collecting all the missed bins, which isn't what we really want to be doing. So I was just wondering, I'm presuming it's because we've got staff missing and perhaps we've not got the same crew doing the same rounds that know where the same bins are. Is that what it is, or are they just trying to get home quicker to have the dinner?
It would be wrong of me, Chad, to guess at the sometimes quite complex reasons behind the different reasons why bins are missed. What I can try and get you though is the figures on missed bins to over time to see, you know, what the numbers actually are, and I'll circulate that to members.
Okay.
It certainly wasn't a criticism. I'm absolutely sure. I was with everybody. They're doing a fantastic job all the way through COVID. Absolutely brilliant. But it was just because we see this new stuff come through. It just, I presume that's what it was. And then another thing is that I keep going on about this air quality. I see air quality is going on here, and the monitors. The company's called Blue Sky Air Quality Monitors. So if somebody can write that down, apparently they're really cheap. They all connect by Wi-Fi. You can put them on lamp columns wherever you want. And that might be, we keep talking about these things, we have to pay £50,000. Well, apparently these aren't £50,000. And they all connect all over the country and give us a better idea. And it would be remiss of me not to mention coming up with plans to renew our leisure centres and facilities after what's happened in the press. I've not seen the TV footage tonight, so I don't know how that's come over. It's all very disappointing. All I'm going to ask is that we make sure this committee very, very quickly has a report come forward. I'm sure the people will give more details on what that needs to be doing, but I think we need to know what's going on with that. And my one disappointment, there's many disappointments, but my one disappointment is, and it probably couldn't have been avoided, is the upset to the staff and the fact that it's sort of come out in such a very short period of time from the notification being passed to Broxtowe to that going out to the media. Seems to have been a really, really short time. I'm sorry that for whatever reason we couldn't have managed that a little bit better, to perhaps had a better outcome for the staff, or to have had more information to have passed on to the staff, because ultimately this is about, no matter politically how we see it, ultimately, and I've always said exactly the same, it's about those staff and it's about the jobs and the fear for their jobs, and that's my, politically I'm sure I'll become more agitated about it through time, but at this minute I just feel for those people and those lives and the effect that will have. So I'm hoping we can do everything we can to support them, however this is going to turn out, because I don't know, because we haven't got the information, but I do think it's a shame that it just got out there so damn quick. It would have, I think, if it would have been Broxtowe, I know we'd have all been sort of sworn to silence, and I'm sure we would have managed it slightly differently. I think that's a shame, but so if we could make sure it comes back, we get a report back here, so we all know what the details are. That would be.
I'm quite happy to provide you with a timeline. I've asked the Deputy Chief Executive to prepare me a briefing for the timeline for members.
Thank you.
But the one thing that did concern me more than anything else was that negotiations with staff were held in confidence, and one of the members of staff went onto social media and talked about it. That was unforgivable. That was unforgivable. You know, they were in receipt of confidential information, and a member of staff at Kimber decided that they would put it out there on social media. You know, that really didn't help, and that precipitated the press response from the school, which we've agreed.
But my point was, I think that I think we should, and I don't know enough about it, but I just felt we possibly could have made more. We've still been about 3 months out, I think, from having to give anybody notice based on the time left. It would have been nice if we could have possibly worked with Emmett and had a solution or whatever before this had to have got out. And I just think that was just
Look, I don't disagree.
we can't wind it back, but it's just a pity.
I don't disagree with you, but they served the notice, and the intent. We put forward an alternative strategy based on the Borough Council running during evenings, bank holidays, school holidays, and weekends. Which we were engaged in conversations with, and that was refused point blank. They've said they want to take over the running of it for the school and the community, so they want to do that as opposed to an operator. and meetings take place tomorrow morning with the school over things like tutor transfer of staff and looking at the terms and conditions for those members affected. It's extremely regrettable, but all I'll say on it further is that somebody ought to have a private word with this. This is not the way that we operate, and the way in which the school have operated. We have the same position regarding Chilwell Comprehensive without saying too much, yet we've cooperated fully right the way through the whole process. We have had regular meetings with the school, yet the school have declined to meet us, even about the Levelling Up Fund, when I wanted to talk to them about putting a £10 million bid in for upgrading the school and facilities, refused to meet. Said they were too busy.
Is this Chilwell or Kimberley talking about?
Kimberley.
Well, I wouldn't want to get into a battle with you, but I mean, those sort of decisions surely should have gone through committees and boards rather than you personally having
we were asking them
meetings
about
with them.
they would work with us, but
Yeah.
wouldn't reply.
Can you, just while we're here, I spoke to Soph earlier, is Sandra Scott will be at the meeting tomorrow, is that? Could you let her know? Well, can you make sure you let Chris know that she's supposed to be there, because she's not aware that she's going? So if you could just let her know. Thank you very much. Thank you.
She does know she's going, I've spoken to her.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? If not, can we move on then to the financial element, starting on page 49?
Yeah, as always, Chair, we do this in three parts. We review the council staffing budget, and we look at the revenue position on income, and we look at our capital position. In terms of the overall staffing budget, I'm pleased to report that we are on target to hit our vacancy rate target, which is £300,000. We're going to hit that. We've already hit £250,000 the first 4 months. We've got a very, very tight control on staffing. We look at every single role at GMT and review how appropriate it is to fill it. Look at different ways of working when a vacancy arises. So it's good to see that. There's 2 points I want to bring to the committee's attention. Firstly is the impact of the pay award. We've made an assumption there it's around £86,000 for general fund. Again, that's based on our assumptions, but the pay award has not yet been agreed formally between the unions and employers, but that's our estimate. And the second point I want to make is that there will be a pressure around market supplements, and there's a number of report that was presented to the personnel committee. We outlined the need for us to deal with skill shortages, not only HGV drivers but other professional classes as well. So there will be a cost associated with that, certainly in this financial year, but nonetheless we will hit that savings target, which is good news. Moving on to page 50 in terms of the income budgets, just to concentrate on the larger variations. The overall picture is pleasing, but I just want to bring a couple of risks to the table. In terms of the good news, it appears that planning fees are holding strong, predominantly down to a few large applications. That's good. The other bit of good news, as the Chief Exec mentioned earlier on, Garden Waste is strong in terms of its income streams and its revenues. That's further good news. There's a little bit of concern, as what surprised members around parking. That's a little bit below target. The last point I want to make is around Beeson Square. That looks really rosy there at £500,000, but the way our billing system works, the income reflects the bill, it's not the cash received. And we are in negotiation with a couple of tenants on the square around making sure we can catch it with outstanding bills. As part of the accounts last year, given the concern I had around those bills, I did set aside £250,000 of the council's balance sheet to mitigate any potential bad debt in the future. So overall position is very positive in the police report, especially given that we're just on the other side of the pandemic. In terms of, while I'm on revenue, in terms of council tax and business rates, broadly speaking, council tax is, I think around, I'll let Phil come around sort of 0.5 or 1% below where we were last year, and business rates is broadly on track. In terms of the capital programme, moving on to page 52 and 53, looking at some of the detail. On disabled facilities grants, again, the number of grants are committed. I'm pleased to report that the personnel committee did approve one particular role to become permanent. That was temporary, and one new role so we can accelerate and meet some of the backlogs of the DFG, which is a really important priority for the council. In terms of Beeson Square, the reason for the shortfall is twofold. Firstly, we've not yet paid out the incentives to the two companies we've signed up for the units, and we've not yet paid the retention. There's a period after the building is complete. In terms of the HRA, we're moving on with that, and now in a different position where we were last year in terms of now our contractors can have access to buildings and can move on with that programme. And finally, Chair, it's pleased to note that the veterans accommodation hopefully will be complete by December. Thank you.
Yeah, I think sorry. Thank you, Mr. Doyle. I think there's a mistake on it. It says December. Are you sure it shouldn't be November? It's like every other building contract at the moment, trying to get windows, building materials, slates, tiles. And I had the biggest shock of my life the other morning when the groundwork contractors were asking for a new day rate. I nearly dropped through the floor when they asked when I heard what they were asking for and getting. Astonishing. Anyway, Councillor Hallam.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, it's always nice to come in under budget, but I looked at the first paragraph on this, the 362k underspend, savings made with vacancies. Savings made with vacancies, to my way of looking at things, means that teams are understaffed and they're not being remunerated, my apologies, for the extra load that they're carrying. And I'm not going to name any names or name any teams, but I know that there has been a retention issue in some parts of the council on that basis, and therefore, whilst I would love to celebrate an underspend, I look at the collateral damage of that and think that perhaps being a little bit more liberal with bumping people up to fill in positions or paying people extra responsibilities when a team is understaffed might go some way to mitigate that damage. And clearly, we have the budget to do it. So I'm sort of reading this with a tear in my eye, knowing that this hasn't happened and what's happened as a result. So thank you, Chair.
The Chief Executive does have the right to pay honorariums at her discretion.
So I would just say that there have been quite a significant number of internal promotions recently. So I'm pleased to see that we are supporting people to grow into more senior positions. We did amend the honorarium policy recently, and we are active in applying it, and certainly have lots of examples of where it has been used, where people are acting to not fully cover for vacancies, but partially. There are, as you rightly say, some individuals who are performing exceptionally well at the moment in view of extraordinary circumstances. And I can give you my personal assurance we will recognise their significant efforts. We always have turnover at the council. Indeed, that is something which is specifically recognised in the savings target. I think what I told the Personnel Committee yesterday, and I should really report to you as well, is that there are certain types of jobs where there are real significant difficulties in attracting professional skills and retaining those skills. And those skills are in high demand, and the people who are professional planners, environmental health officers, accountants, legal officers, HGV drivers, all kinds of skilled people, their skills are in demand like they've never been before. So we have acted proactively to introduce things like a new market supplement policy. We have been actively applying that in partnership with the Personnel Committee. We need to continuously look at our pay structure to make sure it's keeping pace with market demands in order that we are able to rise to the challenge of, you know, the opportunities that we've got, for example, in relation to the Levelling Up Fund. It's certainly, we're very blessed in having professional staff who are very loyal, committed to Broxtowe, and even when there are vacancies, they really step up. And you're absolutely right, we must never take those efforts for granted. You have my personal assurance that that won't happen.
Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. At the top of page 52 on the capital programme, there's obvious reasons for a lag in the programme. Can you just remind the committee, please, Mr Dole, what the catch-up plan is?
In terms of the general fund, the large portion of that particular profile is down to the timing of the payments for the square and payments out for the vehicles, which are large capital flows, and they're in hand. In terms of the HRA, that's really down to teams, the capital works team, who are now working with our framework contractors to move on with the planning replacement programme, the reactive repairs programme. So in terms of that programme now, it's now at a faster pace, down to the fact, as I said earlier, that contractors can now get into the buildings, we can get skilled labour now, as that's in hand. So I'm more confident now than I were last year in terms of hitting the budget on those particular budgets, those particular repairs programmes.
Okay. Any further questions or comments on financial performance and financial issues? No, if not, then can I ask that you note the contents of the report? Duly noted. Move to item 9 then, which is the work programme on pages 55 and 56.
Chair, in Councillor Eason mentioned earlier about Kimberley Leisure Centre, and we will make sure there's a Kimberley Leisure Centre report for you on the 2nd of December.
Ben? Councillor
Chair.
Craig?
That was actually on my list, but what I'd like to see is a very detailed report, please, because I do feel as a ward member that I've been given very little information regarding the negotiations, what's been proposed by Emmett, what's been proposed by here, how this has, you know, fallen apart. And I'd like to see a timeline and full documentation in relation to that. And I think as a ward member, I should be entitled to ensure there's a full report.
I can assure you I've already asked for a timeline for it. Any further questions or comments?
Chair. The levelling up bids for the 2nd of December, they're already reporting to Jobs and Economy, so we may be able to save some officer effort on reporting rather than reporting something twice. By just, I mean, I of course have a vested interest to say no, keep it on Jobs and Economy and teach it from here. But really, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be done twice. So.
Both.
Yes.
I can assure you that there will be, Jobs and Economy will still be receiving those reports. This committee will simply receive an overview report on the progress that's been made by that time.
Just in case anything additional needs to be signed off. Okay, thank you.
And things like constitution as well, that'll give everybody an urge to come that night. Any further questions or comments? If not, then I'll move the recommendation from the chair.
Second, yeah.
All those in favour? With those additions? Okay, thank you very much. It's passed. Item 10, on the exclusion of public and press, we're asked to resolve that under Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, public and press be excluded. I'll formally move that.
Second, Chair.
All those in favour? Right.